Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
The heart monitor's steady beeping filled my hospital room when my sister Amanda stormed through the door, her eyes blazing with familiar contempt. Without warning, she grabbed the cord connecting me to the machine and yanked it from the wall socket. The alarms immediately screamed to life as I gasped, clutching my bandaged chest, where 3 broken ribs made every breath agony. "You always fake being sick for attention, Keith," she snarled, standing over my bed with crossed arms. Through the chaos of blaring alerts, I heard footsteps rushing down the hallway. Nurse Patricia burst into the room, her face stern as granite, having clearly overheard every venomous word. "You're not leaving this hospital." Nurse Patricia declared, her voice cutting through the mechanical wailing as she reconnected my monitoring equipment. "I'm calling the police right now." She pressed the emergency button beside my bed while maintaining direct eye contact with Amanda, whose confident smirk began dissolving into uncertainty. "What are you talking about?" Amanda demanded, but her voice wavered slightly. "He's just being dramatic like he always does. This is ridiculous." I struggled to sit up straighter in bed, wincing as sharp pain shot through my torso. "Amanda, please listen to me. 3 days ago, I wasn't faking anything. I was driving home from the Henderson construction site after putting in 12 hours of concrete work. My truck was stopped at the intersection on Miller Avenue when a drunk driver in a stolen sedan ran the red light going 60 miles per hour. The memories came flooding back with crystal clarity. The sound of screeching tires. The moment of helpless recognition that impact was unavoidable. The crushing sensation as 2 tons of metal compressed around me like a giant fist. The taste of blood in my mouth as consciousness faded. The paramedics had to use the jaws of life to extract me from what was left of my Ford pickup. I continued watching Amanda's expression shift from anger to confusion. They airlifted me here to Presbyterian Medical Center because the local emergency room couldn't handle internal bleeding this severe. Nurse Patricia nodded grimly while checking my vitals. Mr. Thompson suffered 3 fractured ribs, a punctured lung, massive bruising across his abdomen, and what we initially thought was minor internal bleeding. The drunk driver who hit him had a blood alcohol level of 0.22. He died on impact. Amanda's face went pale, but she shook her head stubbornly. "That's impossible. Keith always exaggerates everything medical. Remember when he claimed he had food poisoning in high school? He was just trying to get out of Jennifer's graduation party because he was jealous of her accomplishments." "This isn't high school, Amanda," I said quietly, my voice hoarse, from the breathing tube they'd removed yesterday. "Look at these bandages. Look at the machines keeping track of my heart rate and oxygen levels. Look at the IV pumping antibiotics into my system to prevent infection." Security footsteps echoed in the corridor as Officer Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, his hand resting casually on his radio. "Nurse Patricia called about a disturbance involving patient endangerment. What's the situation here?" Nurse Patricia gestured toward the monitoring equipment Amanda had disconnected. This woman deliberately unplugged life support monitoring for a critical patient recovering from major trauma surgery. She stated her belief that he was faking his injuries for attention. The climactic twist hit like lightning when Dr. Martinez hurried into the increasingly crowded room, carrying fresh test results and wearing an expression of urgent concern. "Mr. Thompson, I need to speak with you immediately about your latest blood work. The internal bleeding we thought we had under control is actually much worse than our initial assessment indicated." He glanced around the room, taking in the tense scene before continuing. "Your hemoglobin levels have dropped significantly since yesterday, which means you're losing blood somewhere we haven't located yet. The incident with your monitoring equipment being disconnected could have prevented us from detecting a potentially fatal hemorrhage. Every minute of observation is critical right now." Amanda staggered backward, as if she'd been physically struck, her hand flying to cover her mouth. For the first time since entering my room, she seemed to grasp the genuine severity of my condition. Officer Rodriguez stepped forward, his expression hardening. "Ma'am, I need you to remain here while we sort this out. Tampering with medical equipment that's monitoring a critical patient is considered reckless endangerment under Pennsylvania state law." As Officer Rodriguez began taking statements, the toxic dynamics that had shaped our family for decades came pouring out like water through a burst dam. I found myself explaining to strangers what I'd never been able to make my own family understand. Growing up, whenever I got sick or injured, my mother would immediately assume I was seeking attention. I told the officer while Dr. Martinez continued examining my chart with growing concern. Amanda was always the perfect child, who never complained, never needed anything extra. I became labeled as the problem child who supposedly invented ailments for sympathy. Amanda shifted uncomfortably by the window, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "That's not how it happened, Keith. You really did exaggerate things. You'd claim stomach aches right before chores, or say you had headaches when it was time to do homework. Do you remember when I was 12 and kept complaining about severe pain in my right side? I asked, my voice growing stronger despite the physical weakness. I was doubled over in agony for 3 days, begging Mom to take me to the doctor. You and she decided I was just trying to avoid the school science fair where you were presenting your award-winning volcano project." Officer Rodriguez looked up from his notepad. "What happened with that situation?" "I collapsed during lunch at Riverside Middle School." I continued the memory as vivid as if it had occurred yesterday. "The school nurse called an ambulance because my appendix had ruptured. I spent 2 weeks in intensive care fighting off infection that could have killed me. The surgeon told my parents that if they'd waited even 6 more hours to seek treatment, I might not have survived." Nurse Patricia, who had been listening intently while monitoring my vital signs, suddenly looked alarmed. "Mr. Thompson, a ruptured appendix at that age with delayed treatment often causes internal scarring and adhesions that can complicate future abdominal injuries. Did anyone ever explain that to your family?" Before I could answer, Dr. Martinez looked up sharply from the test results he'd been studying. "That information is crucial. Patricia, can you pull Mr. Thompson's complete medical history going back to childhood? I need to see everything related to that appendicitis case immediately." Amanda's face had gone from pale to ashen. "Keith, I didn't know. You thought I was lying." I finished for her, "Just like you think I'm lying now. The difference is that this time there are witnesses and medical evidence that can't be dismissed or explained away." Dr. Martinez returned with additional files and a grim expression that made my stomach clench with dread. "Mr. Thompson, your childhood medical records tell a very disturbing story. The appendicitis episode you described resulted in significant internal scarring and adhesion formation throughout your abdominal cavity." He held up recent imaging scans pointing to areas that looked like spider webs across my internal organs. "These adhesions have made your current injuries exponentially more dangerous. The internal bleeding we're trying to control is being complicated by scar tissue from that childhood incident. What should have been a manageable injury has become life-threatening, specifically because your appendicitis was allowed to rupture and fester." The climactic twist arrived when Dr. Martinez delivered the most shocking revelation of all. According to these records, the emergency room physician who treated you at age 12 noted in his report that the delay in seeking treatment appeared to be due to family dismissal of your symptoms. He actually recommended a social services consultation to evaluate potential medical neglect, but the recommendation was never followed up on. Officer Rodriguez stopped writing and looked directly at Amanda. "Ma'am, you're telling me that your family has a documented history of ignoring this man's legitimate medical emergencies." Amanda opened her mouth to respond, but no words emerged. The weight of 28 years of dismissing my pain, of labeling my genuine suffering as manipulation, seemed to crash down on her all at once. The scarring from his childhood appendicitis has created a situation where any abdominal trauma becomes exponentially more dangerous. Dr. Martinez continued relentlessly. Your brother's current condition is critical, partly because of medical neglect he suffered as a child. And today you deliberately disconnected equipment that was monitoring his vital signs during a potential internal bleeding crisis. I watched Amanda's reflection in the window as she processed the magnitude of what she'd done. For the first time in our entire relationship, she was being forced to confront the reality that I had never been the manipulative attention seeker she'd painted me as. Every instance she'd dismissed as fake had been genuine, and her dismissal had caused real, lasting damage. The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of my monitors and the distant sounds of hospital activity in the corridor. Officer Rodriguez continued taking notes while Nurse Patricia checked my blood pressure, which had spiked dangerously high during the emotional conversation. Your blood pressure is elevated to concerning levels, she announced. Dr. Martinez, should we consider sedation to keep him calm while we monitor the internal bleeding situation? Not yet, Dr. Martinez replied, though his expression remained troubled. But we need to minimize stress and keep him under constant observation. Any further disruptions could trigger a medical crisis. Officer Rodriguez turned to Amanda with newfound seriousness. Ma'am, given what we've just learned about the patient's condition and your deliberate interference with his medical monitoring, I'm going to need you to come with me for further questioning. The district attorney will determine what charges, if any, should be filed. Amanda's legs seemed to give out as she sank into the visitor chair beside my bed. Keith, I never meant. I didn't realize. You never wanted to realize, I said quietly, feeling emotionally drained but strangely relieved that the truth was finally emerging. It was easier to believe I was the problem than to admit that our family dynamic was broken. 20 minutes later, the sound of hurried footsteps and an agitated voice echoed down the hallway. My mother, Carol, burst through the doorway like a hurricane, her face flushed from running, and her eyes wild with panic. What is going on here? She demanded, taking in the scene of Officer Rodriguez standing beside Amanda, who remained slumped in the chair looking devastated. Why are the police talking to my daughter? Amanda called me, crying, saying something about Keith being in the hospital and accusations being made. Nurse Patricia stepped forward calmly. Mrs. Thompson, your son Keith is recovering from life-threatening injuries sustained in a major car accident 3 days ago. Your daughter Amanda disconnected critical monitoring equipment while making statements about his medical condition being fabricated for attention. Carol's expression immediately shifted into the familiar pattern I'd witnessed countless times throughout my childhood. Her protective instincts activated exclusively for Amanda while dismissing any consideration of my actual situation. That's ridiculous, she declared, moving to Amanda's side and placing a protective arm around her shoulders. Keith has always been overly dramatic about minor health issues. Amanda was probably just trying to help him stop exaggerating his condition. You people are blowing this completely out of proportion. Dr. Martinez, who had been observing silently from beside my bed, stepped forward with his clipboard of test results. Mrs. Thompson, your son is currently experiencing internal bleeding complications from severe trauma sustained when a drunk driver struck his vehicle at high speed. He required emergency surgery to repair a punctured lung and is being monitored for potentially fatal hemorrhaging. This is not a minor health issue or an exaggeration. Carol waved her hand dismissively. Doctors always make things sound worse than they are to cover themselves legally. Keith learned early that acting sick gets him attention and special treatment. Amanda has never been anything but honest and responsible. Mom, please stop, I said from the hospital bed, my voice weak but firm. Just this once, please listen to what the medical professionals are telling you instead of assuming you know better. She turned toward me with the same expression of irritated impatience I remembered from childhood. Keith, you're 32 years old. It's time to stop this attention-seeking behavior and start taking responsibility for your life like your sister has done. Officer Rodriguez cleared his throat. Mrs. Thompson, we have hospital security footage that we need to discuss with you and your daughter. Would you mind stepping into the hallway so we can review what happened here today? Security footage of what? Carol demanded, but her voice carried a slight tremor of uncertainty for the first time. Nurse Patricia exchanged a meaningful glance with Dr. Martinez before speaking carefully. Mrs. Thompson, our standard protocol requires continuous video monitoring of critical care patients for safety and liability purposes. Every interaction in this room has been recorded since your son's admission. The climactic twist unfolded when Security Supervisor James Wilson arrived carrying a tablet device loaded with video files. Officer Rodriguez, I've compiled the footage you requested. It shows some very concerning behavior patterns over the past 72 hours. He positioned the tablet so everyone could view the screen, then began playing clips in chronological order. This first video shows the patient's sister arriving yesterday evening when he was sedated following surgery. On the screen, we watched Amanda entering my room while I was unconscious, connected to breathing assistance and multiple monitoring devices. Instead of sitting beside the bed or showing concern, she immediately began examining my medical chart and medication dispensers with suspicious intent. What exactly is she doing there? Officer Rodriguez asked, pointing to the screen where Amanda appeared to be adjusting something on my IV drip. Security Supervisor Wilson advanced the footage. Here she is again this morning, approximately 6 hours before the incident you responded to today. The video showed Amanda disconnecting and reconnecting various monitoring cables, apparently testing whether alarms would sound. Carol's face went completely white as she watched her golden child systematically tampering with medical equipment designed to keep me alive. Amanda, what were you doing? Why were you touching Keith's medical equipment? Amanda's response was barely audible. I was just checking to see if he was really as sick as he was pretending to be. I thought maybe the machines were set too sensitively and making normal readings look dangerous. You thought you knew better than trained medical professionals, Dr. Martinez asked incredulously. You decided to conduct your own medical assessment by tampering with life support monitoring equipment. The most devastating footage came next. Security Supervisor Wilson played video from earlier that morning, showing Amanda in conversation with a patient transport aide, asking detailed questions about how to access my medication schedule and whether certain drugs could be withheld or delayed without triggering immediate alarms. She was actively researching how to sabotage her brother's medical care, Officer Rodriguez stated grimly. This wasn't a single impulsive action. This was premeditated endangerment of a critical patient. Carol stared at the screen in horrified silence as the evidence of Amanda's systematic interference became undeniable. The protective narrative she'd constructed around her perfect daughter crumbled with each additional video clip. Mrs. Thompson. Nurse Patricia said gently but firmly, your son has been trying to tell you for 3 decades that he experiences genuine medical emergencies. Today, your daughter nearly caused one by deliberately interfering with equipment designed to prevent exactly that kind of crisis. Amanda finally broke down, completely sobbing into her hands. I don't know why I did it. I just couldn't stand the idea of Keith getting all this attention and sympathy again. Every time something happens to him, everyone drops everything to take care of him, and I just disappear. So you decided to risk his life to prove a point about attention? Officer Rodriguez asked sharply. Do you understand that tampering with medical monitoring equipment for a critical patient constitutes attempted assault under Pennsylvania law? Carol's legs seemed to buckle as she sank into the second visitor chair, staring back and forth between the security footage and her daughter. Amanda, how could you do this? How could you put your brother in danger? Because you taught me to, Amanda replied through her tears, her voice breaking with anguish. You taught me that Keith was always lying, always exaggerating, always trying to manipulate everyone. You made me believe that taking care of him was enabling his bad behavior. The room fell into stunned silence as the toxic family dynamic that had shaped our entire lives was finally exposed in its full destructive power. Carol had spent 3 decades conditioning Amanda to dismiss my legitimate needs, and Amanda had internalized that message so deeply that she was willing to risk my life to prove its validity. Dr. Martinez checked my vital signs again, noting that my heart rate had accelerated dangerously during the emotional confrontation. We need to conclude this discussion soon. The patient's stress levels are approaching the point where they could trigger the hemorrhaging we're trying to prevent. Officer Rodriguez nodded and turned back to Amanda. Ma'am, based on the evidence we've reviewed, I'm placing you under arrest for reckless endangerment and tampering with medical equipment. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As he began reading Amanda her rights, Carol started pleading desperately. Please, she made a mistake, but she's a good person. She works as a bookkeeper. She's never been in trouble with the law. She just got confused about Keith's medical situation. Mrs. Thompson. Officer Rodriguez interrupted. Your daughter spent multiple days planning and executing a scheme to interfere with critical medical care. This wasn't confusion. This was deliberate endangerment of a human life. As Officer Rodriguez completed Amanda's arrest, processing detective Sarah Williams arrived to take over the investigation. She was a woman in her 40s with graying hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to absorb every detail of the complex family situation unfolding in my hospital room. Officer Rodriguez briefed me on the basics. Detective Williams said, settling into a chair with her notepad ready. But I need to understand the full scope of what happened here, and more importantly, what might have been happening that we don't know about yet. Dr. Martinez had been reviewing my latest test results with increasing alarm. Detective Williams, the patient's condition has actually deteriorated since this morning in ways that don't align with normal post-surgical recovery. His white blood cell count is elevated, suggesting possible infection, and his blood chemistry shows irregularities that concern me. What kind of irregularities? Detective Williams asked, her pen poised over her notepad. His electrolyte levels are fluctuating in patterns consistent with medication interference, Dr. Martinez explained carefully. Either someone has been altering his prescribed drug regimen, or he's been receiving substances that aren't part of his treatment plan. Security Supervisor Wilson, who had remained in the room reviewing footage, looked up from his tablet with a grim expression. Detective Williams, I think you need to see this additional video evidence. It appears the suspect's interference with the patient's care was far more extensive than initially realized. He queued up footage from the previous evening showing Amanda in conversation with a night shift orderly near the medication storage area. She's asking him about the hospital's drug inventory system and whether patient medications are tracked electronically or manually. Detective Williams leaned forward, studying Amanda's body language on the screen. She's conducting reconnaissance about hospital security protocols. This suggests planning and premeditation beyond the incidents we've already documented. The climactic twist emerged when Security Supervisor Wilson accessed footage from the hospital pharmacy, showing Amanda following a pharmacy technician through areas where patient medications were prepared and distributed. This video is from 2 days ago, approximately 16 hours after the patient was admitted. How did she gain access to restricted areas? Detective Williams demanded. She identified herself as the patient's emergency contact and stated she needed to verify his medication allergies to prevent adverse reactions, Security Supervisor Wilson explained. The pharmacy staff, acting in good faith to protect patient safety, allowed her to review his prescription profile. Dr. Martinez's expression grew increasingly alarmed as he correlated the timeline with my medical chart. Detective Williams, if she had access to his medication profile 2 days ago, that coincides exactly with when his recovery began showing unexpected complications. Nurse Patricia, who had been monitoring my vital signs throughout the investigation, suddenly spoke up with urgency. "Doctor, his blood pressure is spiking again and his heart rhythm is becoming irregular. Should we consider the possibility that he's been receiving medications that weren't prescribed?" "Run a comprehensive tox screen immediately," Dr. Martinez ordered. "I want to know about every substance in his system, including anything that might not show up on standard post-surgical monitoring." As medical staff rushed to collect blood samples, Amanda's breakdown accelerated into full confession territory. "I didn't mean to hurt him." She sobbed, her words barely coherent through gasping tears. "I just wanted to prove that he wasn't as sick as everyone thought. I thought if I could show that his symptoms got better without all the medications, then people would see that he was exaggerating." Detective Williams set down her pen and fixed Amanda with a steely stare. "Exactly what did you do to your brother's medications?" "I replaced some of his pain medication with over-the-counter pills that looked similar." Amanda admitted, her voice breaking completely. "I thought if he wasn't getting as much pain relief but acted like he was still suffering, it would prove he was being dramatic." The room erupted in shocked exclamations from the medical staff. Dr. Martinez grabbed my chart and began frantically recalculating dosages and drug interactions based on Amanda's confession. "Do you realize that substituting medications for a post-surgical patient recovering from internal bleeding could cause shock seizures or death?" he demanded. "Pain medication isn't just about comfort. It's about preventing cardiovascular stress that could trigger hemorrhaging." But Detective Williams wasn't finished uncovering the full scope of Amanda's actions. "What else did you tamper with, and why now? What triggered you to take these risks after your brother was severely injured?" Amanda's next revelation hit like a thunderbolt, explaining motivations that went far beyond sibling rivalry. "I work as a bookkeeper for Keith's construction company," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the floor. "I've been taking money from the business accounts for the past 8 months to pay for my daughter's private school tuition and my ex-husband's legal fees." Detective Williams and Officer Rodriguez exchanged significant glances as the investigation suddenly expanded beyond medical endangerment into financial crimes. "How much money are we talking about?" Detective Williams asked. "About $200,000 so far," Amanda replied, each word seeming to cause her physical pain. "I kept planning to pay it back, but the amounts kept getting larger. When Keith got hurt, I realized he might have time to review the books while he was recovering. If he discovered the missing money, my whole life would be ruined." The complete picture finally crystallized with devastating clarity. Amanda hadn't been trying to prove I was faking illness for attention. She'd been trying to discredit me, incapacitate me, or worse, to prevent me from discovering her theft of massive amounts of money from my business. "So you decided that if your brother was severely injured or died from medical complications, you wouldn't have to worry about him discovering your embezzlement," Detective Williams stated flatly. Carol, who had been listening in horrified silence, finally found her voice. "Amanda, you stole money from Keith's business? After everything he's done to help our family over the years? After he gave you that job when you were going through your divorce?" "I was desperate," Amanda pleaded. "David's custody lawyer was demanding payments I couldn't afford, and Sophie's tuition was due. I thought Keith would never notice because the business is so successful. I planned to pay it back before anyone discovered it was missing." Dr. Martinez interrupted the confession to address the immediate medical crisis. The tox screen results confirmed that the patient has been receiving inconsistent pain medication, which has stressed his cardiovascular system and likely contributed to the continued internal bleeding. We need to stabilize his condition immediately before we can assess the full damage from medication tampering. As medical alarms began sounding again, Detective Williams took charge of the scene. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm afraid your daughter is being arrested for multiple felonies, including reckless endangerment assault, tampering with medical equipment, and grand theft. Given the amounts involved and the life-threatening nature of her actions, she'll be held without bail pending arraignment." Officer Rodriguez began leading Amanda toward the door in handcuffs, while she continued sobbing apologies that rang hollow given the calculated nature of her crimes. Carol followed behind them, alternating between defending Amanda and apologizing to me, her whole worldview crashing down around her. As my hospital room finally fell quiet except for medical equipment and concerned murmuring from the treatment team, I realized that nearly dying in a car accident had inadvertently exposed decades of family toxicity and criminal behavior that might never have been discovered otherwise. Dr. Martinez worked quickly to counteract the effects of Amanda's medication tampering, while Nurse Patricia monitored my vital signs with renewed vigilance. Mr. Thompson, your sister's interference with your treatment could have caused permanent damage or death. You're fortunate that we discovered it when we did. Detective Williams remained beside my bed reviewing her notes. Keith, I know this is overwhelming while you're trying to recover, but we'll need your cooperation in prosecuting your sister for multiple serious crimes. Are you prepared to testify about what she's done? Despite the physical pain, emotional trauma, and shocking revelations about my family's betrayal, I felt a strange sense of relief washing over me. For the first time in my entire life, objective evidence had validated my experiences and held accountable the people who had dismissed, minimized, and endangered me. Detective Williams. I said quietly, my voice growing stronger despite everything I'd endured. I'm ready to tell the complete truth about everything that's happened in my family. It's time to stop protecting people who were never protecting me. Over the next several hours, as medical staff worked to stabilize my condition and reverse the damage caused by Amanda's tampering, I found myself experiencing something completely foreign, a sense of personal agency in dealing with my family's dysfunction. For 32 years, I had been gaslit, dismissed, and manipulated into believing that my perceptions were unreliable and my needs were excessive. Now surrounded by objective medical evidence, security footage, and criminal charges, I finally had the validation and support necessary to take control of my own life. Detective Williams. I said once my vital signs had stabilized enough for extended conversation, I want to press charges for everything Amanda has done. Not just the medical endangerment, but the theft from my business and any other crimes that investigation uncovers. She nodded approvingly while reviewing her growing list of evidence. Keith, given the scope of what we've discovered, the district attorney will likely prosecute this as multiple felonies. Your sister could face significant prison time, especially if we can prove that her medication tampering was intended to seriously harm you. Dr. Martinez, who had been monitoring my recovery from Amanda's sabotage, looked up from his charts with concern. Mr. Thompson, I need you to understand the full extent of what your sister did to you. By substituting your prescribed pain medication with ineffective substitutes, she subjected your healing surgical sites to cardiovascular stress that could have triggered fatal hemorrhaging. Are you saying she was actually trying to kill me? I asked, the words feeling surreal as they left my lips. I'm saying that anyone with basic knowledge of post-surgical care would understand that tampering with pain management for internal bleeding patients creates life-threatening risks. Dr. Martinez replied carefully. Whether she intended death or just incapacitation, her actions demonstrated reckless disregard for human life. Nurse Patricia, who had become fiercely protective of my well-being over the past few hours, added her own perspective. Keith, in 20 years of nursing, I've never seen a family member deliberately sabotage a patient's medical care. What your sister did goes beyond normal family conflict into criminal territory. I felt a surge of determination, unlike anything I'd experienced before. Detective Williams, I want to call my business partner Jake immediately. If Amanda has stolen $200,000 from our construction company, there might be additional financial crimes we haven't discovered yet. That's exactly what we need to investigate, Detective Williams agreed. Financial crimes often escalate over time, and perpetrators typically take larger risks as they become more desperate to avoid detection. Within an hour, Jake Morrison arrived at the hospital, looking shocked and concerned. Jake and I had built Morrison Thompson Construction from nothing over the past 8 years, and he'd become closer to me than my biological family had ever been. Okay, you're... Keith, man, I had no idea you were this badly hurt, Jake said, clasping my hand firmly. When Detective Williams called about financial irregularities in our business accounts, I thought there must be some mistake. Okay. Jake, I need you to know that Amanda has been stealing from us, I said directly. She's admitted to taking around $200,000 over 8 months, but we need to find out exactly how much damage she's caused. Jake's expression shifted from concern to anger. Amanda's been managing our bookkeeping for 2 years. If she's been stealing for 8 months, she could have compromised our entire operation. We've got contracts worth millions of dollars that depend on our financial stability. Detective Williams pulled out her notepad again. Mr. Morrison, we're going to need complete access to your business financial records going back at least 2 years. Can you arrange for an emergency audit? I'll call our accountant immediately, Jake replied, already reaching for his phone. Linda Thompson handles our books. She's not related to Keith despite the same last name. She'll be able to identify any irregularities quickly. The climactic twist arrived when Jake's phone call to our accountant revealed information that staggered everyone in the room. Linda says Amanda's theft goes back much further than 8 months, Jake reported grimly. She found evidence of systematic embezzlement dating back almost 2 years, with total losses potentially exceeding $400,000. $400,000? I repeated, feeling physically sick despite the pain medication. Jake, that's enough to destroy our business completely? It gets worse. Jake continued, his voice tight with controlled fury. Linda discovered that Amanda forged your signature on multiple loan applications using the business as collateral. If those loans default, we could lose our equipment, our facilities, and our contractor's license. Detective Williams was writing furiously, her expression growing more serious with each revelation. How much total debt has she created using forged signatures? Jake consulted his notes from the phone call. Approximately $600,000 in unauthorized business loans, plus the $400,000 in direct theft. Amanda has potentially destroyed $1 million business to fund her personal expenses. The magnitude of betrayal was almost incomprehensible. Amanda hadn't just risked my life out of spite or jealousy. She'd systematically destroyed the business I'd spent nearly a decade building, forged my signature on fraudulent documents, and committed crimes that could result in decades of prison time. Keith out. Detective Williams said seriously, this investigation has expanded far beyond medical endangerment. Your sister has committed multiple felonies that could result in 20 to 30 years in federal prison. Are you prepared for the legal battle that's coming? Before I could answer, my hospital room door opened to admit attorney Linda Thompson, our business accountant, who had rushed to the hospital upon learning about the scope of Amanda's crimes. Keith, I am so sorry about your injuries and about what Amanda has done to your business, she said, carrying multiple thick folders of financial documents. Linda, how bad is it really? I asked, dreading the answer, but needing to know the complete truth. Linda opened the first folder and began spreading documents across my bedside table. Amanda's embezzlement was sophisticated and systematic. She created false vendor accounts, submitted fraudulent expense reports, and diverted customer payments into personal accounts she controlled. But the forged loan documents represent the most serious threat to your business. She handed me copies of loan applications bearing what appeared to be my signature. She borrowed against your business equipment, your real estate, and even your personal assets. If you can't prove these signatures were forged and get the loans invalidated, you could lose everything you've worked to build. Jake's anger was now visible in his clenched fists and tight jaw. Keith, Amanda didn't just steal money from us. She tried to frame you as a willing participant in defrauding financial institutions. If we can't prove your innocence, you could face criminal charges yourself. The irony was devastating. While I lay in a hospital bed recovering from nearly fatal injuries, fighting for my life against both accident trauma and my sister's sabotage, she had positioned me to take the blame for her financial crimes. Detective Williams. I said with newfound resolve, I want full prosecution for everything Amanda has done. I want her charged with attempted murder for the medical tampering grand theft, for the embezzlement and fraud, for the forged loan documents. Keith, I have to warn you that pursuing maximum charges against your sister will likely destroy your relationship with your mother permanently, Detective Williams said carefully. Are you prepared for that consequence? I thought about 32 years of dismissed illness, ignored pain, and gaslighting that had trained me to doubt my own perceptions and minimize my own needs. I thought about Amanda's systematic attempt to destroy my business forge, my signature, and potentially frame me for crimes I didn't commit. I thought about her deliberate sabotage of my medical care while I was fighting for my life. Detective Williams? I replied firmly. My relationship with my mother was destroyed the moment she taught my sister that my suffering didn't matter. I'm not responsible for protecting people who spent decades refusing to protect me. Jake nodded approvingly. Keith, whatever legal support you need, Morrison Thompson Construction will provide it. We'll fight this together, and we'll make sure Amanda faces full consequences for what she's done. Attorney Linda Thompson began organizing the financial evidence that would be crucial for both criminal prosecution and civil recovery. Keith will also need to pursue civil litigation to recover the stolen funds and invalidate the fraudulent loans. This will be a complex legal battle, but the evidence is overwhelmingly in your favor. As evening approached, and my hospital room filled with the organized activity of building a comprehensive legal case against Amanda, I realized that nearly dying had paradoxically given me the opportunity to truly live. For the first time in my adult life, I was surrounded by people who believed me, supported me, and were committed to seeking justice on my behalf. Dr. Martinez returned with updated test results showing that my condition was finally stabilizing now that Amanda's medication interference had been identified and corrected. Mr. Thompson, your recovery should proceed normally now that we're managing your actual medical needs instead of whatever complications your sister was creating. Doctor, how long until I can be fully functional again? I asked. I have a business to save and a legal case to build. With proper medical care and no further sabotage, you should be ready for limited activity within 2 weeks and full function within 6 weeks, Dr. Martinez replied. But you'll need ongoing monitoring to ensure no permanent damage resulted from the medication tampering. As my support team of medical professionals, business partners, and legal advocates continued working around my hospital bed, I felt a profound shift in my understanding of what family actually meant. The people fighting for my well-being and seeking justice on my behalf weren't related to me by blood, but they had demonstrated more loyalty and care than my biological family had ever shown. Jake, I said quietly as the evening wound down, thank you for believing me and standing by me through this nightmare. Keith, you're not just my business partner, Jake replied seriously. You're my friend and the most honest person I know. Anyone who tries to hurt you is going to have to go through all of us. For the first time since the accident, I felt genuinely hopeful about the future. The road ahead would involve extensive legal battles, financial recovery efforts, and ongoing medical treatment, but I was no longer fighting alone against people who dismissed and undermined me. I had finally found the strength and support necessary to break free from 3 decades of family toxicity and build a life based on truth, respect, and genuine care. The next morning brought a parade of legal and law enforcement officials as the investigation into Amanda's crimes expanded into a multi-agency effort. District Attorney Michael Foster arrived personally to review the evidence, accompanied by FBI agent Rebecca Chen, who specialized in financial fraud cases. Mr. Thompson, District Attorney Foster began setting up his files on the rolling table beside my hospital bed. Your sister's crimes span multiple jurisdictions and federal banking regulations. We're treating this as a major fraud case with the attempted murder charges taking priority. Agent Chen opened her laptop and began displaying financial records that painted a picture of systematic criminal enterprise spanning nearly 2 years. Amanda's embezzlement operation was far more sophisticated than typical family business theft. She created shell companies, established fake vendor relationships, and manipulated electronic banking systems to hide the money trail. Jake, who had spent the night working with our accountant Linda Thompson to compile comprehensive financial evidence, looked exhausted but determined. Keith, it's even worse than we thought yesterday. Amanda didn't just steal money from our business. She created financial obligations that could bankrupt us even if we recover every stolen dollar. What kind of obligations? I asked, though I dreaded learning about additional damage. Linda Thompson spread new documents across my bedside table, highlighting entries that made my stomach clench with anxiety. Amanda used forged documents to establish the business as a guarantor for multiple high-risk investments that are now failing. If these investments collapse completely, Morrison Thompson Construction could be liable for over $1 million in losses we never agreed to assume. District Attorney Foster studied the evidence with growing concern. This level of financial manipulation suggests Amanda had assistance from someone with banking or legal expertise. Individual bookkeepers don't typically have knowledge of complex investment guarantees and corporate liability structures. The climactic twist emerged when Agent Chen's financial investigation revealed connections that shocked everyone in the room. We've discovered that Amanda's ex-husband David has been working as a financial consultant for the investment companies she established as fake vendors. This appears to be a coordinated effort to defraud multiple businesses and financial institutions. David's involved? I asked incredulously. Amanda told everyone he was just a deadbeat ex-husband who wouldn't pay child support or legal fees. David Martinez is actually a disbarred attorney who lost his license for financial misconduct 3 years ago, Agent Chen explained. He's been operating under multiple false identities while helping Amanda and potentially other accomplices commit sophisticated white-collar crimes. Jake slammed his fist on the hospital room table, causing my water pitcher to jump. Keith, this means Amanda's theft from our business was part of a larger criminal conspiracy. We're not just victims of family betrayal. We're victims of organized financial crime. District Attorney Foster was already coordinating with federal authorities. Mr. Thompson, your case has become central to a major investigation into interstate fraud and organized financial crime. Amanda and her ex-husband face federal charges that could result in life sentences. Dr. Martinez, who had been monitoring my vital signs throughout the intense legal discussions, intervened with medical concerns. Gentlemen, the patient's blood pressure and heart rate are elevating to dangerous levels. We need to limit stress-inducing conversations until his condition stabilizes further. Doctor, I need to understand the full scope of what's happening. I insisted, though I could feel my heart racing with anxiety and anger. How many other businesses or people have Amanda and David victimized? Agent Chen consulted her preliminary investigation notes. Initial evidence suggests at least 12 small businesses across 3 states have been targeted using similar methods. Total losses could exceed $10 million, making this one of the largest small business fraud schemes we've investigated. The magnitude of discovering that my sister's betrayal was part of a massive criminal conspiracy felt surreal. What had begun as family medical gaslighting had exposed organized financial crime that victimized dozens of people and businesses. Nurse Patricia, who had been observing my reaction to the legal revelation, spoke up with authority. I'm calling a medical timeout. Keith's stress levels are approaching the point where they could trigger hemorrhaging or cardiac complications. Everyone needs to leave except essential medical personnel. Wait, I said urgently before the room could clear. District Attorney Foster, I need to know about my mother, Carol. The security footage showed she knew about Amanda's financial crimes, but didn't report them. What are her potential legal consequences? District Attorney Foster exchanged glances with Agent Chen before answering carefully. Your mother could face charges as an accessory after the fact if we can prove she had knowledge of the embezzlement and took steps to conceal it. However, we're more interested in her cooperation as a witness against Amanda and David. What would cooperation involve? I asked. Complete disclosure of everything she knows about Amanda's financial activities, testimony about the family dynamics that enabled the medical endangerment and assistance in recovering stolen assets, Agent Chen explained. In exchange, we might offer immunity from prosecution for her role as an accessory. Jake leaned forward intently. Keith, do you think your mother will cooperate, or will she try to protect Amanda even now? Before I could answer, Nurse Patricia's prediction proved accurate, as my heart monitor began showing irregular rhythms and my blood pressure spiked dangerously high. Dr. Martinez immediately ordered the room cleared, while medical staff rushed to prevent the stress-induced medical crisis I'd been warned about. Mr. Thompson, you're experiencing cardiac stress that could trigger internal bleeding, Dr. Martinez announced as he administered emergency medication through my IV. We're going to sedate you lightly to prevent further complications while your body processes everything that's happened. As the sedation took effect, I heard District Attorney Foster and Agent Chen coordinating with hospital security to ensure my safety while the investigation continued. The realization that Amanda's crimes extended far beyond family dysfunction into organized financial conspiracy added new layers of danger and complexity to an already overwhelming situation. Detective Williams will maintain a security presence outside your room until we can assess whether you might be targeted for retaliation by other members of this criminal conspiracy. Agent Chen's voice reached me through the growing haze of medication. Your testimony will be crucial for prosecuting not just Amanda, but potentially dozens of other financial crime suspects. Through the sedation, I felt a profound sense of validation that my instincts about Amanda's behavior had been accurate, even when I couldn't articulate the full scope of what was wrong. The family gaslighting that had trained me to doubt my perceptions had actually been covering up criminal behavior that threatened far more than just my emotional well-being. As consciousness faded, my last coherent thought was determination, to recover quickly enough to participate fully in seeking justice not just for myself, but for all the other victims of Amanda and David's criminal conspiracy. For the first time in my life, my suffering had meaning beyond personal pain. It had exposed organized crime that was destroying families and businesses across multiple states. Dr. Martinez's voice was the last thing I heard before the sedation took complete effect. Mr. Thompson's condition is stabilizing. With proper rest and protection from further stress, he should be ready to participate in legal proceedings within 72 hours. The knowledge that justice was finally moving forward, supported by objective evidence and competent authorities, allowed me to rest peacefully for the first time since the accident. Amanda's reign of medical gaslighting and financial crime was ending, and my recovery could finally proceed without sabotage or interference. 6 months later, I stood on the observation deck of the newly expanded Morrison Thompson Construction Headquarters, watching crews pour the foundation for our largest commercial project to date. My physical recovery had exceeded all medical predictions, but more importantly, my emotional and psychological healing had transformed my entire understanding of family trust and personal strength. Amanda had pleaded guilty to 17 federal felony charges, including attempted murder, grand theft fraud, and conspiracy. Her cooperation with authorities investigating David's organized crime network had reduced her sentence to 15 years in federal prison, but she would also face additional state charges upon release. The woman who had spent our entire lives claiming I was weak and manipulative was now serving hard time for crimes that demonstrated her own profound moral weakness. David Martinez received a life sentence for orchestrating financial fraud schemes that victimized over 50 businesses across 7 states. The FBI's investigation revealed that Amanda had been recruited into his criminal organization through their marriage and her access to my construction company's finances had provided a gateway for massive fraud operations. My mother, Carol, had ultimately chosen cooperation with authorities over loyalty to Amanda. Her testimony about decades of family dysfunction and her knowledge of Amanda's financial crimes proved crucial for prosecution efforts. In exchange for full cooperation, she received immunity from criminal charges, but faced the complete collapse of her worldview about family relationships. Keith, the forensic accountants, have finished their final report. Jake announced joining me on the observation deck with a thick folder of documents. We've recovered 94% of the stolen funds, and the invalidation of Amanda's fraudulent loans has been completed. Morris & Thompson Construction is not only financially stable, but actually stronger than before the theft was discovered. I accepted the folder with gratitude for Jake's unwavering support throughout the legal and financial recovery process. Jake, I need you to know how much your belief in me meant during the worst part of this nightmare. When my own family was trying to convince everyone I was unreliable, you never doubted my integrity. Keith, you're the most honest and hardworking person I've ever known, Jake replied seriously. Anyone who spent 5 minutes observing your character would realize that you don't have a manipulative bone in your body. Your family's treatment of you said everything about their dysfunction and nothing about your worth. The view from our new headquarters encompassed the entire valley where we'd built dozens of residential and commercial projects over the past 8 years. Morris & Thompson Construction had not only survived Amanda's sabotage, but had used the lessons learned from her betrayal to implement security measures and financial oversight that made us a model for other small businesses. Dr. Martinez had become a close friend throughout my recovery process. His weekly check-ins had evolved from medical necessity to genuine concern for my ongoing well-being. Keith, your latest test results show complete healing from both the accident trauma and the complications caused by medication tampering, he had announced at my most recent appointment. You're physically healthier now than you were before the accident. More significantly, my psychological recovery had been supported by trauma therapy with Dr. Sarah Klein, who specialized in helping adults overcome childhood emotional abuse and family gaslighting. Keith, you've made remarkable progress in learning to trust your own perceptions and set healthy boundaries with toxic family members. She had observed during our recent session. The validation you received through this legal process has accelerated your healing in ways that typically take years to achieve. The foundation I'd established in Amanda's honor, the Family Medical Advocacy Foundation, had already helped over 200 families dealing with medical gaslighting and healthcare dismissal. Our work focused on educating medical professionals about family dynamics that could endanger patient safety and providing resources for individuals whose legitimate medical needs were being minimized or ignored. Keith, we've received another 12 applications for emergency medical advocacy assistance this week. Foundation Director Maria Santos reported during our monthly board meeting. The demand for these services demonstrates how widespread medical gaslighting really is in dysfunctional family systems. Working with families who had experienced similar betrayal and dismissal had given deeper meaning to my own suffering. Every parent who learned to believe their child's pain, every sibling who chose protection over enabling every medical professional who recognized the signs of family medical abuse, represented progress toward preventing future tragedies. Carol had undergone extensive therapy to address her role in creating the toxic family dynamic that nearly cost me my life. Our relationship now existed within carefully maintained boundaries that prioritized truth over comfort. Keith, I need you to know that I understand how my favoritism toward Amanda and dismissal of your needs created the conditions that made her crimes possible. She had acknowledged during one of our supervised family therapy sessions, I failed you as a mother, and I'm committed to earning your forgiveness rather than expecting it. The process of rebuilding our relationship required Carol to confront 32 years of denial about her children's true characters. Amanda's criminal conviction had shattered her illusions about having a perfect daughter and a problematic son, forcing her to acknowledge reality that contradicted her preferred narrative. Mom, I appreciate your efforts to understand what happened, but I need you to realize that forgiveness is a process, not a destination, I had explained during our most recent conversation. I'm willing to work toward a healthier relationship, but it has to be based on acknowledging truth rather than maintaining comfortable lies. Jake's wife, Susan, had become like a sister to me, providing the kind of unconditional family support I'd never experienced from my biological relatives. Keith, you've taught our children what integrity looks like when it's tested by severe adversity, she had said during our recent family barbecue. They understand that real strength means standing up for what's right even when it costs you everything. Watching Jake and Susan's children play in their backyard while their parents discussed honest feelings without manipulation or gaslighting had shown me what functional family relationships actually looked like. Their home provided a model for the kind of authentic connections I hope to build as I continued healing from decades of toxic family dynamics. Detective Williams had remained in touch throughout the investigation and prosecution process, keeping me informed about the broader impact of Amanda and David's crime network. Keith, your willingness to pursue maximum prosecution has been instrumental in dismantling one of the most sophisticated small business fraud operations we've encountered, she had explained during our final official meeting. Your courage in seeking justice has protected countless other families and businesses from victimization. The knowledge that my suffering had meaning beyond personal pain had transformed my understanding of survival and recovery. Instead of simply enduring family toxicity, I had chosen to expose it completely, creating consequences that protected other potential victims while establishing my own safety and autonomy. As the sun set over the construction site where my crews were building another project that would serve the community for decades, I reflected on the profound transformation that had emerged from nearly dying in a hospital bed 6 months earlier. Amanda's attempt to destroy me through medical sabotage and financial crime had instead revealed her own criminal nature while providing me with the evidence and support necessary to break free from 32 years of family manipulation. The heart monitor that Amanda had disconnected in an attempt to prove I was faking illness had ultimately provided the security footage that exposed her systematic sabotage of my medical care. The embezzlement she had used to fund her lifestyle while framing me for fraud had been discovered by investigators who initially responded to her assault on a critical patient. Every aspect of her plan to discredit or eliminate me had backfired, revealing her own guilt while vindicating my integrity. My phone buzzed with a text message from Nurse Patricia, who had become a close friend and medical advocate. Keith just wanted you to know that our new patient safety protocols have already prevented 2 cases of family medical interference this month. Your experience is saving other people's lives. The circle of justice felt complete. Amanda's cruelty had inadvertently created systematic changes that would protect future patients from similar betrayal. My willingness to seek maximum consequences for her crimes had exposed organized financial fraud that threatened entire communities. The family dysfunction that had nearly killed me had been transformed into resources and advocacy that helped other families heal and function authentically. Standing on the deck of the business Amanda had tried to destroy, surrounded by evidence of success and growth that had emerged from surviving her worst betrayals, I realized that breaking free from toxic family dynamics hadn't cost me my family. It had allowed me to discover what real family actually meant. The people who fought for my well-being, believed my experiences, and supported my healing weren't related to me by blood, but they had proven their loyalty through actions rather than words. As construction lights illuminated the project site below, and the lights of our thriving business district stretched across the valley, I felt profound gratitude for the strength that had carried me through the darkest period of my life and delivered me to a future built on truth, integrity, and authentic relationships. The little boy who had been ignored while his appendix ruptured, the teenager whose legitimate illnesses had been dismissed as attention-seeking, and the adult whose near-death experience had been minimized as drama, had finally been heard, believed, and validated. Justice had been served not through revenge, but through the natural consequences of choosing truth over comfortable lies and protection over enabling. Amanda would spend the next 15 years in federal prison learning that actions have consequences regardless of family protection. Carol would spend the remainder of her life working to earn forgiveness rather than expecting it as her right. And I would continue building a life based on surrounding myself with people who demonstrated their care through actions rather than demanding loyalty through manipulation. The heart monitor that had saved my life continued beeping steadily in my memory, a reminder that truth has its own rhythm that can't be silenced by disconnection or dismissal. As long as that rhythm continues, there's always hope for justice, healing, and the kind of family relationships that nourish rather than destroy the people we claim to love. Sometimes the people who hurt us most give us the greatest gift of all, the motivation and opportunity to break free and discover who we really are when we're not trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it. Amanda's betrayal had inadvertently set me free to build the life I deserved, surrounded by people who proved their love through protection rather than destruction. The foundation we'd built, the business we'd saved, the legal precedents we'd established, and the family relationships we'd healed all stood as monuments to the truth that justice delayed is not justice denied. Sometimes it takes nearly dying to discover what it really means to live. And sometimes the people who try to destroy us give us exactly what we need to save ourselves and protect others from similar harm. As I prepared to leave the observation deck and join Jake's family for dinner, my phone rang with a call from a journalist writing a story about family medical abuse and the importance of believing patients when they report their symptoms. The opportunity to share my experience and advocate for systematic changes that would protect other families felt like the final piece of transformation, from victim to survivor to advocate. Hello, this is Keith Thompson. I answered, ready to tell my story once again in service of preventing other families from enduring the betrayal and abandonment I had survived. Yes, I'm willing to talk about how medical gaslighting nearly cost me my life and how seeking justice created changes that are saving other people from similar experiences. The conversation would be difficult, requiring me to relive painful memories and expose private family dysfunction for public education. But the knowledge that my suffering could prevent others from experiencing similar betrayal made every difficult moment worthwhile. Standing in the gathering darkness, surrounded by evidence of the life I'd built after breaking free from toxic family dynamics, I felt ready to share my story with anyone who needed to hear it. The heart monitor that had saved my life would continue beating in the stories of other families who learned to protect rather than dismiss their most vulnerable members. Justice had been served, healing had been achieved, and the future stretched ahead, filled with possibilities built on truth rather than manipulation, protection rather than enabling, and authentic relationships rather than toxic obligations. Have you ever experienced a family member dismissing your legitimate medical concerns or physical pain? How did you handle the situation? And what advice would you give to others dealing with medical gaslighting from people who claim to love them? Your experiences and insights could help other families recognize and address these dangerous dynamics before they escalate into life-threatening situations. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more stories about overcoming family dysfunction and seeking justice. And share this content with anyone who might benefit from understanding the serious consequences of medical gaslighting and family betrayal. Your engagement helps us reach other people who may be struggling with similar situations and need to know that they deserve to be believed, protected, and supported during their most vulnerable moments. Thank you for listening to my story, and for supporting content that advocates for truth, justice, and the kind of authentic family relationships that heal rather than harm. Remember that seeking help and setting boundaries with toxic family members isn't selfish or disloyal. It's an act of self-preservation that often protects others from similar abuse while creating opportunities for genuine healing and growth. I hope that sharing my experience encourages you to trust your own perceptions, seek appropriate medical care when needed, and surround yourself with people who demonstrate their love through actions rather than demanding loyalty through manipulation. You deserve to be believed, supported, and protected, especially during times of illness, injury, or vulnerability.